The internet is a story about community and connection. A global space where we share our knowledge, our joys, and our lives. A space to receive news, services, and perspectives. The internet is where we connect. This is where ideas are shared, business is conducted, memories are preserved, and identities are shaped. A community open to all of us, to build, to form, and to protect. We are all connected. We are the internet. Let's shape our future together. We welcome you to the Internet Governance Forum 2025 in Norway.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being so kind to be here so early in the morning after a long trip to, here, and to be for this session that will be about, as you have seen from the title, trying to understand who are the friends and who are the foes in this very complicated and unclear situation for the internet governance and especially for the fight to disinformation. It's a session that will have some participants with me here from Nordic countries, one from Finland and the other one from Norway, but also we will have other participants from remote that will be from Brussels. We will have somebody from the European Commission, and we will have somebody from the based in Berlin at the moment, but is one of the most active person in the fact-checking and countering disinformation in the US. And we will have Paola Gori that will open, that is from the EDMO. This is the Secretary General of EDMO. That is the body that the European Union has tasked for fighting disinformation. So, I think that we don't have too much time. I would prefer that we start immediately. If Paola is ready, I will give the floor to her. Are you ready? Yes, she's with us. Welcome, Paola.
Yep.
You look frozen.
Yeah, I guess you're hearing me and are sharing also a quick presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, well, but we don't see the presentation yet. She is coming.
I see it on my screen, so just let me know when you see it.
Yes, now we can see the first slide. It's okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Giacomo. And good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be in this, to start the day, actually, this day zero with this session. As Giacomo was saying, the overall IGF focus is on internet governance, and within this topic, of course, disinformation is creating quite a lot of, if you want, emotional reactions around. Also in past editions of the IGF, and I think everybody will have here. What I just wanted to bring up here today again is this situation in which we are, where on one side we have the spread of disinformation narratives, be it from internal or from external actors. They tackle different policies, be it migration, climate change, elections, of course, health. They're often very linked. For example, the same goes, for example, with gender disinformation and so on. And it can be spread internally and externally, and by internal and external actors. It can be state-backed, it can be also not state-backed. There can be the use of proxies. There can be the use of artificial intelligence both to generate content but also to spread it. These are all things that I think we all know, as well as the fact that disinformation is there in a broader mission of creating doubt, creating division in our society, put us in a situation in which at a certain moment we don't actually are in a position to really be sure about stuff, because we got so many information with so different facts or non-facts actually, and this puts us in a very difficult situation overall, and this erodes, of course, the information integrity. Information integrity is key in a democratic process because, let's put it in a very simple and easy way, if we want to take any decision, we have to have a basis on which we can make this decision. So if the basis is actually not based on facts, then we are in a situation in which we may make a decision which is not in our interest in the end. On the other side, what we are seeing more and more is a huge rhetoric against any policy framework that tries to tackle disinformation. One of the main arguments at the basis of this is the fact that it may violate freedom of expression, which, if you look at it from a very neutral point of view, it's a very fair concern, because it is very important that whichever policy that deals with disinformation respects fundamental rights and also freedom of expression. But the rhetoric that we are seeing there is actually more, if you want, an emotional one rather than a rhetoric which actually looks at the real framework and then actually does a real assessment of whether freedom of expression is violated or not, because very often actually it is not. And the two reinforce each other. And this is something we are seeing globally, so I'm just setting the scene in a very global way. What we are seeing as approaches, and of course EDMO, and I will say a few words about EDMO, though those who are familiar with the IGF are also familiar with EDMO, but so far, because it's not the first session we're having here, is that whichever response to get back to information integrity starts, of course, with digital literacy, media literacy, with strengthening quality journalism, and so on. And if you look at the global frameworks that we have around, like the Global Digital Compact, the guidelines by UNESCO on the governance of digital platforms, the recent communication by the High Representative and the European Commission on the communication on international digital strategy for the EU, and also the Digital Services Act, which is a regulation, there are a few elements which are common there, which are the fact that any response, as we were saying before, has to be grounded on fundamental values and the respect of human rights. We cannot transcend from it. Has to happen. The focus is rather on algorithmic transparency. There should be a multi-stakeholder approach. This is, I think, the IGF is actually the one of the responses to that, right? So it's really a multi-stakeholder level. It is based on risk mitigation, which means that it looks at the risk that the way that the platforms, for example, or some online actors work could have on certain elements, for example, public health, minors, civic discourse, and so on. So just to remind us that the focus is not on we delete content, we look at content, but rather on we look at if the way the platforms work can actually be abused for malign purposes. So I just wanted to set the scene in highlighting these differences. And the instruments that I was mentioning earlier, I think, show that we are all going into that direction, so that the global principles overall are those, and then, of course, the regional specificities, they rightly so, also have differences. And this is normal. I don't think we will ever get to something which is global in this sense, but this is fine. As long as the principles are shared and the principles are all agreed, then I think that it is important to keep regional specificities, also because, especially when it comes to disinformation, it is a global phenomenon, but the local characteristics are playing quite a strong role. Now, I will not go into this slide, but just wanted to show these two slides. This is one climate change disinformation, the next one will be on the economics of disinformation, just to show how complicated it is to navigate the disinformation sphere. It's not just just one problem that is easy to understand and with an easy solution. This makes it very complicated, but probably also very interesting for everybody involved to try to address it. And I will not go through it as I was saying, but just I wanted to just go with this.
Paola, you break up. Can you repeat the last phrase?
I will just... Sorry?
Can you repeat the last phrase? You break up.
Yeah, sorry. So I just wanted to say that I was showing these slides not to go through them because we don't have time, but just to show how complex the disinformation phenomenon is, and by consequence how complex it is also to find a solution. So I think it's not by chance that it is years and years that we are all together sitting, also sometimes disagreeing, in trying to find a solution, because the problem itself is complex, and you cannot always simplify complex situations, like in the case of disinformation. And you cannot simplify it precisely because human rights are at stake. So before giving the floor to our next panelist, I just wanted to recap for those who are not familiar with EDMO, what is EDMO doing, and why was I showing all this complexity, because the complexity brings us to a situation in which we have to understand properly the phenomenon in order to come with solutions. And the solutions cannot be just one solution, it's a mix of different solutions. And what EDMO is doing, EDMO is funded by the European Commission and is one of the pillars of the response to disinformation, is precisely that. We are a sort of a platform that brings together the different stakeholders. It's sort of like what the IGF is doing more generally on internet governance. We are bringing them all together. When possible, we are trying to provide tools like trainings or like repositories of fact-checking articles and so on. And by putting the community together, we are also in a position to find common trends, to do investigations, to do joint media literacy initiatives, to do policy analysis. So how are we doing it? Just to say that we have an EDMO EU platform, if you want, which goes EU-wide, and then we work with 14 hubs, which are national or multinational. They cover all EU member states. And these are key because you remember what I was saying at the beginning. We cannot avoid looking at the local specificities when it comes to disinformation. Very easily said, the culture, the policy, the politics, the history, the language of the media diet of a country are actually having an impact on whether disinformation is impactful or not, if it is entering a country or not, and so on. So we really need the local element to be there, otherwise we would miss part of the picture. And these hubs working all together under our coordination also allow us, as you can imagine, to do pan-European analysis, pan-European comparison, and so on. So I hope I was clear enough to somehow set this scene. I started with the global element, and then I focused a little more on the EU, and our next speakers will continue in this sense, and I think I can give it over to Benjamin Schulz.
Thank you very much, Paola. Yes, from Europe, you make a very comprehensive panorama. Now we go to the US. Benjamin, American Sunlight. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Am I coming through clear?
No, you can go now if you want.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is the audio okay?
Yes, please.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Giacomo, Paola. I saw Miko and Martin there on the screen. It's great to be back here with you all at the IGF. This is a really wonderful gathering, and I think a great place for dialogue, for understanding, for discussing the issues of the day, and really remembering just how global and borderless and connected the internet makes us all. And of course, that leaves ample opportunity for bad actors to misuse the internet and all of its wonderful technologies to spread disinformation. My name is Ben. I work for the American Sunlight Project, a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C., although I'm based in Berlin at the moment. And we analyze and fight back against information campaigns that undermine democracy and pollute our information environment. It's no secret that in the US, a lot has changed in the last 6 months.
No,
things have
definitely
shifted.
not.
Yeah.
We noticed. We noticed.
We've noticed. Things have shifted greatly. And we've seen, just putting it frankly, democracy begin to backslide in the United States. We've seen bad actors become more active than ever in spreading information campaigns and using information operations to tear at the social fabric of the US. And we've also seen the platforms move closer and closer to the administration, really in a total sea change from the last 4 years and even the 4 years before that. We've seen people be denied entry to the US based on having critical text messages of the administration, something that really, as an American, I thought I would never see happen to my country. And so in this day and age in which content moderation, the removal of harmful or illegal content online is being equated falsely to censorship, to a violation of the right to free speech, free expression, in order to really make progress on making our internet safer and continuing the work that we all do, we have to really start to reframe how we approach this. We have to start to think about new ways, new creative ways to maintain the alliance, the transatlantic alliance, in these rough times. And so in the preparatory call that we all hopped on for this panel, I was told not to be so negative. So I'm gonna cut myself off there on the bad, and we're gonna shift to the good. And I'm gonna tell you all kind of how I'm approaching this reframing. You know, as someone working in this space, you know, someone whose organization has been called evil by a certain person that runs X, and so forth. You know, there's some work we can do, I think, to maintain the progress that we've made in making the internet a safer, better place. Recently in the US, non-consensual, explicit deepfakes, colloquially known as deepfake porn, have actually been made illegal. And this is a really groundbreaking achievement, advancement in our country. And it's something that we've done a lot of advocacy work for a really long time. And finally, just in the last months, we had enough votes in Congress to make this happen. And this achieved wide bipartisan support. And the way that we framed this is we actually showed Congress just how affected by this problem they were too. A lot of times our elected officials, you know, putting it frankly, maybe aren't keeping up as in the weeds as we are with all of the things happening online. You know, they're busy people, fair enough. And one action that we took was we wrote a report in which we laid out just in very plain terms how Congress was being affected by this problem, how people online of all ages, particularly young women, were being affected by this problem of being depicted in deepfakes. And we were able to push a bill over the finish line, and it was signed recently. And now platforms have to take down deepfake videos after receiving a request from a victim within 48 hours. You know, there's been plenty of criticism of this bill. It's not perfect, but it's been a big step forward. And I think we're going to get into a little bit more of this later on this panel on you know, the varying degrees of regulation in different European countries. Of course, Europe is a big continent. The EU is big, 26, 7, you know, plus a few more in the EEA member states. And there's a lot of conflicting values and arguments around regulating content online. But my hope, amidst all of the not so nice things happening in the US right now and the, you know, unfortunate degradation of the transatlantic relationship, my hope is that with small steps like these that have been taken in the States that do have broad support, such as banning explicit deepfakes that are made non-consensually, my hope is that collaborating on these issues, that Europe and the US and countries all around the world can continue the dialogue and continue to make some progress on keeping the internet safe and making it safer. And so with that, I will stop myself and pass it back to you, Giacomo, and the panel can continue, and I'm sure we'll have some good discussion coming up.
Thank you very much. Benjamin, just one question. You moved to Berlin before November or after November?
I moved in January. The timing just sort of worked out, but, you know.
Very timely.
Yeah.
I can understand. Okay, thank you. I hope that we will have time for questions. I remember that there is a mic over there. As soon as we finish with the presentation, we will discuss with the audience, because I think that there are questions that are coming. So, who's next?
Okay.
Mikko, please. Introduce yourself.
Thank you.
You are one of the members of the network that Edmo just presented us.
So my name is Mikko Salo. I'm representing a Finnish NGO run fact-checking and digital information literacy service, Faktabaari. We are part of a Nordis, that is part of the Edmo, the kind of Nordic hub, and we're working with Morten on that one. I probably kind of open it up a little bit, my angle, from a civil society point of view, whereas I understood Morten is more like the journalistic side that we are working on. But yeah, indeed, very, very challenging times. We started 11 years ago, it was still like accuracy. I think now it's more about the integrity of the information, and when you are coming from a country with a Finland that is now praised for its preparedness culture, so I try to phrase it like, where do we need to prepare now? And I think it's very much to the information integrity and a kind of AI literacy that is very, very urgently needed. And there our small NGO has been working with actually government officials, pushing them to get the kind of retrain the teachers, and then providing guidance to teachers that are very lost, of course, with the AI at the moment. And why am I so worried as an organization starting from fact-checking is that what is happening to our information, what is happening to our sources? Do people really anymore know where the information stems from and what kind of consequences it has, especially in trust-based societies like the Nordic societies? And so these are big challenges. But what gives me some like a hope is that I can say that we are happy to be part of the EU context, that there is at least like some sort of rule book for the internet that is badly broken. There is like a raising awareness that we need to kind of know something. I think as we're speaking, they are currently in Hague actually framing what is security at the moment, and I would talk about the cognitive security at the moment. And then we are talking about the famous 5% of investment to security, but now what I'm referring is the 1.5, the whole of society security and the information integrity, and I think that's the frame that we should be talking. In general, the media education investments are all over the world pretty non-existing at the moment, so there is a lot to improve at least at the moment. Finland is apparently performing the best as we are doing it. If I would invest something now, and what we are trying to do in Finland is exactly going back to the basic, is still the children, the next generation. I think that's where we have to find some sort of protection and ensure that before they first need to, I mean, this sounds kind of crazy, but they need to be able to think before they use AI. And I was just framing, and I was actually asking the ChatGPT, how does it look like a AI native person? Because if we are not able to think ourselves, we are not able to use the AI as it's meant at the moment. So I would perhaps leave you with these thoughts about the importance of the education and the possibilities that we have in empowering the teachers in different societies to at least address the youngsters for the information integrity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mikko. Are you more afraid of your neighbors or your supposed friends?
We are not afraid of our neighbors. We are prepared, and there is a 50 years of history of that one. But we are. I mean, everybody has a lot to do with this information side, and it's very mental, so to say. And I think nobody's too prepared for that one. And this is a new battlefield, and we just need to take it calm and try to progress. And that's why the IGF is doing very important work to keep a kind of internet somehow in place.
Thank you very much. So, before to give the floor to Morten, that is the next speaker, I want to remember that we have with us also Eric Lambert, that will make the report of this, and it's an essential figure. He's not with us, but he's behind the scene. Morten, your organization is partially also owned by the National Public Service Broadcaster.
Among others, yes. So my name is Morten. I'm from Faktisk, the Norwegian fact-checking organization. We're jointly owned by all of the major media companies in Norway, including the public broadcaster and also the commercial public broadcaster, yes. So I'm going to talk about 3 issues that I think are important in this context. So I'm both part of Faktisk, the fact-checker, but I'm also the coordinator of Nordis, so the hub of EDMO, that Mikko and Faktabar is also part of. And the first point I want to raise is that we talk about disinformation and misinformation here. I think one of the core challenges that we face in responding to this problem is that we don't know enough about the scope of the problem, and we don't know enough about its impact either, at least in a lot of domains. And I think the conditions for gaining more knowledge about this problem have become worse over the past few months. So the reason why it's becoming worse is because of regulatory divergence between Europe and the US. So up until about a year ago, several legislations came into being which were supposed to increase transparency from major tech platforms, forcing them to provide more information to independent fact-checkers, but also to researchers. And I think this...
One. Except one.
Except one, of course. Yeah, the legislation was supposed to apply to all of them, but X didn't refuse to be part of the legislation. That is correct. So, but we see that there were already last year, or this year, there were some signs that things were deteriorating when Meta closed down the fact-checking program in the US. And we were expecting them to do so in Europe as well. That hasn't happened, fortunately, but we think these programs that allow us to gain more knowledge about the disinformation phenomenon are probably under threat, which is going to make our life more difficult. But there is a different problem here as well. It's very hard to, because of the wealth of information that is online in the first place, it's very difficult to estimate the scope of disinformation there. So you can see when Paula, for example, shows you a model of the disinformation phenomenon, it's very complex, it has a lot of variables, and it's very difficult to disentangle just the overall composition of platforms, the algorithms there, from disinformation and misinformation specifically. So I think it's become more difficult to obtain knowledge about this phenomenon, and that hampers the size, the scope, and of our response. So I think we have a fundamental problem there. It's probably solvable, but it's something that worries me. The second thing I want to address is the relationship between policymakers and political bodies and independent actors like Faktisk, for example, and like Faktabari, now that disinformation and misinformation is, to a greater extent, on the political agenda. So I think overall it's a good thing that both governments and the European Union and others are attempting to limit the impact and the spread of disinformation. But it also places independent actors in a difficult position because we need to be and maintain our independence from governments and from regulatory bodies in order to do our job and to maintain the trust of our audience. And once our objectives are aligned with the objectives of governments and of other regulatory and official bodies, I think it's easy for others to throw our independence into doubt because the alignment is too close. And this is, I think, something that both we as fact-checkers and as hubs of EDMO, but also the political bodies need to work out over the next couple of years to figure out what would be the right kind of cooperative coexistence between journalistic organizations that have been at the forefront of the battle against disinformation for years and governmental bodies as well. I think it's a difficult challenge, but it's one that we are in the process of addressing. The final point I want to address has to do with something that Mikko just mentioned, which is he asked ChatGPT to give him some information that would be pertinent to this session. And I think this, to me, raises the challenge that we may, when we talk about mis and disinformation, may be fighting yesterday's battles. Because up until now, the way we have related to mis and disinformation, both as consumers, accidental consumers maybe, but also as organizations that try to address it as a problem, is that we know that the disinformation and misinformation that's out there is usually observable from the outside. And that means that we can see posts on Facebook, we can see videos on TikTok. They might be algorithmically delivered to individual people on their private feed, but the content is out there in the open. However, when you use chatbots like ChatGPT or Claude, you can use whichever you want, the information that you receive from the chatbot is not in the public sphere at all. It's a response generated on the basis of a prompt that you give to the language model. which means that we as fact checkers, for example, are unable, we can't see what responses you're getting. And the more information consumption is driven into chatbots, the less we will be able to observe the misinformation out there, and the less able we will be to respond to it as well. So I don't have a solution to this. I think what's going to happen if this development accelerates is that literacy and information literacy will be much more important than it is today, because it will be up to the individual consumer and the individual user of chatbots and LLMs to actually assess the information that they're being provided. So I think we might see a transition from more debunking and fact-checking work like what we've been engaged in so far to more literacy work and really empowering people to think critically about the outputs of chatbots, for example. So I'm going to close there. I think we will see some big changes in the battle against misinformation in the coming years, but it really depends on both the regulatory divergence between the US and Europe, but also the AI development in usage of AI in the general public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that the last thing that you said are food for thought. We need to reflect on that. But who has to reflect more is probably the European Commission that is with us in the form of Alberto Rabachin. This shift from the fact-checking to media literacy and empowerment of the users, you agree with that?
Thank you, Giacomo, for this question. Indeed, this is, I hope you all can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you well.
This is certainly a shift that is happening, and we are acknowledging that. And I would like to show you a few slides that I have prepared to accompany my presentation. Just give me a second that I make this happening. Yep. You should be able to see it.
Yes, it's coming.
Okay.
Still black, but we hope that we'll see it in a second. Yes, now we can see.
Okay. So yes, indeed. So from the European Commission point of view, what we have in place, is a framework, which is quite a rich framework, trying to, preserve the integrity of the information sphere. It's not necessarily, it's a problem of content, but it's also a problem of functioning of the information ecosystem, of the digital information ecosystem. And first of all, I think we have to make sure that also the citizen that of the European citizen are also themselves considering disinformation and misinformation and information integrity as an issue, as a problem, as a challenge. And in fact, the latest Eurobarometer survey from 2023 and 2024 made ahead of the European election had shown that 38% of the Europeans consider, disinformation, misinformation, one of the biggest threats to democracy. There is really also recently 82% of the European consider that disinformation is a problem for democracy, and they are aware, most of them are aware of this problem. So we are doing something that is perceived as useful by the citizen, and also where we have to look at when we try to address the disinformation phenomenon, certainly also from the citizen point of view. Social media, online social network are the sources of the problem, the biggest source of the problem. And this also reflects the technological development that we have witnessed in the last 10 years, where, the digital online information ecosystem became the main source of information. Of course, some of you mentioned also the role of AI, and certainly, AI, the use of AI, of course, AI opens a lot of opportunities in all sectors, but can also use for malicious activity. And also thanks to Edmo, we are currently monitoring the amount of disinformation that is linked to content that has been generated by AI. And we see that this content is taking up, this type of content is taking up. And we have witnessed this in particular in the latest national election in Europe. But what is the EU doing? First of all, we are working with partners among EU countries, with other countries outside the European border, and with international organizations, and we are very happy to be here talking about this important subject. Of course, there is also a very important mission, which is raising awareness and communicating about this phenomenon. I think Edmo is doing a great job with his network, to also inform the citizen on the different forms that this phenomenon can take. Of course, we are also promoting access to independent media, to fact-check content. We support media literacy activity. And then we also foster this, in particular around the code of practice on the code of conduct and disinformation, we foster this cooperation between social media platform and civil society organization. Last but not least, of course, there is a pioneering regulation, which is the Digital Services Act. The Digital Services Act is the first global legal standard for tackling disinformation while protecting freedom of expression and information. This regulation does not look at content, but looks how the content is distributed, basically, looks at the functioning of the algorithm, looks at avoiding that malicious actors abuse this algorithm to spread disinformation, to manipulate public discourse, to create different systemic risk. It gives to the Commission strong investigatory powers, which is also helping in increasing transparency on the functioning of social media platforms. Then we have, I mentioned, the Code of Conduct on disinformation. The most recent development is that the Code of Practice on disinformation has now been brought within the co-regulatory framework of the DSA, so it becomes a meaningful benchmark for a very large online platform to fulfill the DSA requirement from, of course, the disinformation point of view. It contains a large set of commitment and measure. And then there is the third pillar, which is societal resilience. I will put Edmo under this basket. As I said, Edmo is a great tool that we support to increase awareness about the phenomenon of disinformation through the detection and the analysis of it. We have supported also the creation of the highest ethical and professional standard in the fact-checking for fact-checking in Europe, and we finance a lot of media literacy activities. This is a little bit the story of the code. We started back in 2018 with 16 signatory and 21 commitments. Now we are in 2025, 42 signatory with a very granular code that includes 43 commitments and 128 measures. As of the 1st of July, the code, as I mentioned before, we fully enter into the DSA framework and will be auditable. So this is also the big transformation that we are doing with this, moving the code under the DSA. So the signature of the code will need to be audited on the implementation of the code. This will be an obligation under the DSA. I'm not spending a lot of words on the code because maybe people are familiar, but the code wants to tackle several areas that are relevant for the disinformation phenomenon. Demonetization of disinformation, transparency of political advertising. I mean, we also have new regulation coming into place, reducing manipulative behavior, empower user, empower fact checkers, and provide access to data for research purposes. And then concluding, you have seen, and it's really a pleasure to see that in this panel, there are a lot of Edmo representatives. It was a huge effort from our side to create this network of 14 apps, soon to be 15. We will have a new hub coming up, which aligned to the new strategy for international cooperation of the European Union. We will have a new hub that will cover also Ukraine and Moldova, which are a critical regional spot if we want to have fight disinformation. And let me also remind that maybe it's not clear to everyone how big is this network. EDMO includes more than 120 organizations across the whole EU, including Norway and soon also Ukraine and Moldova. And last but not least, you mentioned it at the beginning, Giacomo, media literacy. Media literacy is an aspect that appears in different parts of our strategy, is part of our policy and regulatory framework, both in the DSA and in the European Media Freedom Act. We have a media literacy expert group. We also have the new European Board for Media Services that has a subgroup on media literacy. EDMO is doing great activities, in particular at local level, with initiatives that are tailored to the needs of the different member states, and in particular to Creative Europe, and through pilot project and preparatory action, we support a lot of cross-border media literacy activities. I will stop here and give you back the floor.
Thank you very much, Alberto. We are quite late, but I don't want to spoil the audience from the possibility to raise questions. I see that already there is somebody there. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Lou Coatney. I'm a retired American librarian over here for my younger Norwegian American children. On LinkedIn, I have a white paper about the Ukraine war titled Biden and Blinken's War Beginning Holocaust, Objective Facts Footnoted. And two big lies are being pushed by the European Union, by Europeans. First of all, Kiev 2014 was an outside agitated coup for 4 objective reasons, which I put in my paper. Secondly, the attack in 2022 is provoked by Zelensky himself, pumped up by the Europeans in Munich, threatening Ukraine getting nuclear weapons. And finally, which really concerns me, Europe is voting against the annual United Nations anti-Nazi resolution, which sort of is self-defining, self-incriminating, that we are Quisling collaborators. Now, my question is, if the EU is so biased, pro-war biased, shouldn't the United Nations keep it at far arm's length as far as judging what's misinformation and disinformation? Thank you for letting me ask my question.
Thank you. Other question from the room? Okay, in the meantime, Alberto, do you want to answer to this first question while, oh, yes, please, go ahead. There's a second question.
Hi, my name is Thora. I'm a PhD researcher from Iceland, examining how very large platforms and search engines are undermining democracy. I am asking about academic access, because this is a big problem, and I've been a research fellow at the Humboldt Institute, where they have Friends of the DSA, which is a group of academics who are trying to gain this access, but the large platforms are dragging their feet and claiming that EU has to make a few definitions in order for this to start. And I'm wondering, what is the status of academic access, and what should we start with? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, you want to answer to this, and then Alberto will give the other question?
Yes, I can just echo what was just said from the audience. We recently tried to run a project where we were supposed to work with researchers to extract information from one of the major platforms, and we noticed very quickly that the research APIs where you can actually extract information was much more limited than we had expected. So I think this is a major problem that a lot of people experience, and it definitely has not been fixed yet.
Okay, so Alberto, do you have some element of answer to the first question? And probably you have to complement what has been said about access to the data from the platforms that is essential for understanding what happens.
Yes, Giacomo. On the first question, and this is an important element that I want to stress, when we talk about, detection of disinformation, analysis of disinformation, we don't want to be the one calling the shots. We are supporting an independent, multidisciplinary community, which is represented by EDMO here, 120 organizations, which are selected by independent experts. And the work that they do in fact-checking and analyzing this information is completely independent from not only from the European Commission, but also from other EU governments. And this is really something that we really are taking care of, and we want to be preserved. On the second question, I think, there is the Digital Services Act that obliges platforms to provide data for research activity. There is an upcoming delegated act that should also move the bar up or down, let's say, in terms of providing more access to researchers in Europe for doing their work. I think this is fundamental to have a better understanding of the phenomenon and therefore to design proper policy responses.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that we run out of time. There is one more question? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Muhammad Aded Ali. I'm from Somalia, part of recipe program recognizing artificial AI propaganda in terms of digital integrity violation involves identifying when AI technology are misused to deceive, manipulate, or misinform individuals or groups. These violations can threaten trust, transparency, ethical standard in digital communication. So my question is, how can EU rules recognize this in terms of internet integrity? Thank you.
In terms of the internet?
Internet and digital integrity, based on EU rules.
Okay. I think that we can give a generic answer, that is that the information integrity becomes now more and more, as Mikko said before, the relevant point, is because especially we will have to face, thanks to the artificial intelligence, a flood of disinformation automatically made, and so it becomes more and more important to identify which are the reliable sources and if the information has been manipulated, and this, according to what Martin was saying before, will become more and more difficult. So a mix of rules, as European Union is trying to do, and work on the media integrity made by the media and the journalists is absolutely essential to try to face this unpredictable future. Thank you very much. Sorry that we didn't give you too much answers, but we share with you a lot of questions. But this is the times we are living, and we hope that in the next days we can find some other answers from other partners. I just remember you that in a few minutes we'll start in workshop room number 2, a seminar by BBC and Deutsche Welle that is about how the public service could remediate to part of the problems that we have faced this morning. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating, and I wish you a nice IGF, and thank you for coming again.